How did a canned water startup with a heavy metal logo and a name like Liquid Death outsell the biggest beverage brand on the planet at Whole Foods? No celebrities, no billion-dollar ad budgets, just water in a can, and a brand strategy that turned an everyday commodity into a cultural rebellion. Today on Business Theory, we're dissecting one of the most audacious brand stories in modern business history. This isn't just about hydration, it's about how branding, storytelling, and subversion turned Liquid Death into a $700 million juggernaut. Because what you're about to hear isn't just a case study, it's a playbook for brand warfare in the age of attention. Water is one of the most essential commodities on Earth, and one of the hardest to brand. It's odorless, tasteless, colorless. It's free from your tap and sold in endless variations from grocery stores to gas stations. For decades, bottled water has been marketed through glossy visuals of alpine peaks, cascading streams, and yoga poses in slow motion. Brands like Evian, Smartwater, and Fiji sold purity, tranquility, prestige. But in 2019, Liquid Death flipped that narrative on its head. Instead of purity, they sold pain. Instead of peace, they sold punk. And instead of plastic bottles, they sold tallboy aluminum cans covered in flaming skulls and death metal fonts. The result? The water brand that looked like a craft beer and sounded like a Slayer album, all while being 100% mountain water. Mike Cesario, Liquid Death's founder and a former creative director in the ad world, spotted a gaping opportunity in the market. While health-focused brands continued to market wellness with serenity and silence, Cesario asked, what if we marketed healthy products the same way Red Bull or Monster markets energy drinks? The logic was simple. Today's younger consumers don't want to feel like they're being sold to. They want brands that entertain, surprise, and feel like an extension of their identity. And for a growing demographic of health-conscious yet culture-obsessed consumers, there was no water brand that felt cool, none that felt subversive. Liquid Death filled that vacuum. Marketing lesson number 1. If the product is boring, make the brand entertainment. Cesario didn't try to make water exciting. He wrapped it in a story that made people laugh, double take, and, most importantly, share it. Liquid Death wasn't just disrupting beverages, it was disrupting expectations. At its core, branding is about storytelling, but few brands dare to tell a story this bold. Liquid Death embraced shock marketing, not as a gimmick, but as a strategic filter. From its first viral campaign, it was clear this wasn't another wellness product. The brand leaned into absurdity. One early ad featured a demonic-looking man chugging a can of water, screaming like a banshee. In another, they satirized the energy drink space by sponsoring a grandma to commit wild stunts in the name of hydration. They even hired a real witch to place a hex on plastic bottles. An absurd stunt, but one that cemented their anti-plastic stance in a way people actually remembered. Cesario understood something few brands grasp. In an attention economy, you don't win by playing it safe. You win by being unignorable. And Liquid Death didn't just shock for clicks. It built an identity. The brand spoke like a band, not a beverage. Their copy was irreverent. Their website sold merch before it sold product. They even had a tongue-in-cheek mission statement: to make people laugh and get them to drink more water. The result? A beverage that felt more like a streetwear label than a hydration product. It became a badge of irony, a wink, a middle finger to boring branding. Marketing lesson number 2. Shock gets attention. Identity builds connection. While other brands spent millions on polished ads that barely broke through the noise, Liquid Death's DIY-style content went viral with a fraction of the budget. They didn't just hijack cultural cues, they built their own mythology, and their customers became part of the joke. In doing so, they made one thing clear: Liquid Death wasn't for everyone, and that's exactly why it worked. Most companies start with a product, then ask, how do we market this? Liquid Death flipped that script. They started with an audience and asked what would make them care about water. That audience? Young, irony-soaked, meme-hardened consumers. People who grew up with social media, who didn't want brands to lecture them about health, sustainability, or hydration. They wanted brands that felt like a friend or a band, not a parent. Liquid Death's genius was in not marketing to the masses. Instead, they went deep with niche communities: skaters, metalheads, comedians, underground creators. Instead of polished athletes or wellness gurus, they partnered with punk bands and stand-up comics. Influencers weren't handed scripts, they were given total creative freedom. This wasn't influencer marketing, it was influencer empowerment. And the content that emerged didn't feel like ads, it felt like chaos, like culture. They created content that blurred the lines between satire and sincerity. Marketing lesson number 3. Build a brand that feels like a subculture, not a sales funnel. Liquid Death customers posted pictures with cans like they were collectibles. They wore branded hoodies like concert merch. By starting with their ideal customer and building a brand tailored to their world, Liquid Death didn't just find product market fit, they created brand market obsession. Liquid Death's most brilliant move may seem deceptively simple. They put water in a tallboy aluminum can. But this wasn't just a novelty. It was a strategic Trojan horse. In a beverage aisle filled with plastic bottles and pastel labels, the matte black, flaming skull-covered can didn't just stand out. It shocked. It made people laugh, double-take and ask, "Wait, what is this?" It wasn't an accident. The packaging did what no salesperson ever could. It created curiosity. More importantly, it positioned Liquid Death against the enemy, plastic. The company loudly championed aluminum as infinitely recyclable, while mocking the overuse of single-use plastics in beverage packaging. The environmental message was serious, but the delivery was hilarious. That duality was Liquid Death's signature. Use humor to land real values. And here's where it gets deeper. The can wasn't just packaging, it was media. Every can turned into a conversation piece, a selfie prop, a meme, a collectible. This was water people actually wanted to be seen drinking. Cesario understood that in today's world, the product is only half the experience. The other half is how the product fits into a person's identity. Marketing lesson number 4. Packaging is a stage. What story does yours tell? The can made Liquid Death instantly Instagrammable. It helped the brand spread organically through word of mouth and user-generated content. When someone pulled one out at a concert, gym, or office meeting, it sparked attention and conversations. That's not packaging, that's branding weaponized. By making their packaging look rebellious, Liquid Death got people who wouldn't usually talk about water to talk about Liquid Death. And in an industry drowning in sameness, standing out was half the battle won. By 2022, something astonishing happened. Liquid Death, the sarcastic canned water brand with zero traditional advertising, outsold Coca-Cola in certain Whole Foods locations. A startup founded in 2019 overtook one of the most iconic beverage brands of all time in under 4 years. How? It wasn't product innovation. The water inside the can is still just water. It wasn't pricing. At $1.99, it's more expensive than Coke. And it wasn't mass distribution or retail muscle. The answer lies in something every legacy brand struggles with: relevance. Liquid Death's content reached people where they live, on TikTok, Reddit, YouTube, and Instagram. Their ads weren't ads, they were entertainment. Weird, funny, highly shareable. Campaigns like the Liquid Death Country Club. The brand also built a merchandising empire. From graphic tees to skateboard decks to collectible cans, Liquid Death generated serious revenue outside of beverages. And more importantly, made fans feel like insiders. Marketing lesson number 5. When your brand becomes a lifestyle, you've won the category. This loyalty translated into velocity at retail. People weren't just buying it once, they were repeating, recommending, and promoting it. Liquid Death also secured shelf space in 60,000 stores, including Target and 7-Eleven, while raising over $70 million in venture funding, with minimal traditional marketing spend. And it did all of this while intentionally breaking the rules of CPG branding. Where Coke sells nostalgia and Pepsi sells pop culture, Liquid Death sells pure rebellion. And it worked. Not by being better than the competition, but by being something they could never be. Liquid Death's rise wasn't a fluke or a one-hit viral wonder. It was the result of relentless brand consistency, even as the company scaled from punk rock obscurity to big box retail shelves. Most brands, once they achieve mass appeal, water themselves down, pun intended. They round off their edges to appease a broader market. But Liquid Death chose a different path. They doubled down on their DNA. As the company expanded into over 60,000 retail locations, launched new product lines like flavored sparkling water and iced teas, many expected them to tone it down. They didn't. They kept the skulls, the satire, the absurdity. In 2023, they released a horror comedy film, Dead Till Death, about cursed water. They partnered with celebrities like Travis Barker. Marketing lesson number 6. Mass appeal doesn't require mass dilution. Liquid Death scaled by going deeper, not broader, proving that a brand can reach millions without losing what made it magnetic. While legacy brands still obsess over market segments and sanitized messages, Liquid Death weaponized cultural specificity. They didn't worry about being universally liked. They focused on being fiercely loved by the right audience. And in doing so, they rewrote the rulebook. You don't have to change your brand to grow, you have to believe in it enough not to.